Norvald. I'm working with Oracle as a software engineer on MySQL. I work on the optimizer team. So my job is really to work on query optimization and execution. I usually work on GIS. If you noticed, we had a lab release technology preview out this start of April, I think. So I'm really excited about that. But in addition to the work I do with the optimizer, I'm also the contact point for package maintainers in various Linux distros. So Linux distro package maintainers have a direct line into MySQL Engineering through me. So if there are any technical questions or stuff they want to ask, they go through me, and we have direct line into the engineering part. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, how we view the downstream Linux distros and how this cooperation works and what we have done, what we can do, all that. So I'll have to show this. I'm going to talk about things we want to do, things we might do. So don't enter any sales contract based on what I say today, but this is kind of what we want to do. So I'll start by explaining what we do about MySQL at Oracle. We had MySQL for 4 years in Oracle now. I'll talk about our development process, how we handle what we call distro bugs. That's bugs from a package or from packaging. I'll talk about the upstream downstream relationship, good things, bad things, what happens when we make a mistake. I'll talk a bit about coordinating between various Linux distros. Because we're upstream, we see several Linux distros downstream, and we want to coordinate a bit between these. We want them to be more or less in sync, doing the same thing in the same way, not differently. And I'll leave some time for questions afterwards, but if you have something you want to ask, just stop me and ask the question while we go. So, this is more or less what we've put out the last 4 years. A few versions of MySQL, the server, some versions of MySQL cluster, which is the cluster server. We have the workbench tool, a developer and DBA tool. We have certification processes. We have some courses you can take to learn more about MySQL. We have what we call MySQL Fabric, which is kind of high availability and sharding infrastructure. That's in our release candidates at the moment. It's still not a finished product. And as you see, there's some enterprise products here. We give away our software for free, but we sell support. That's a business model. And with support, you get access to a few more tools. That's kind of the selling point of support. It's not only support, we also get a few more tools. The core server and everything is free. It's GPL, but we have a few tools that you get when you pay for a support subscription. Some integration tools that will integrate MySQL better with, for instance, your Oracle management stuff you already have. Some enterprise backup, enterprise plugins for authentication and auditing. These are plugins, so the server itself is the same, but there are plugins to add this functionality. And we distribute our server. I'm going to talk most about the server now. We distribute it in a lot of file formats for Windows, Mac OS, Solaris, and a lot of Linux distros. We publish these RPMs and tarballs and everything on devmysql.com, which is where we have our download page. They're also on a lot of FTP servers and mirrors out there. And just recently, before Christmas, our Christmas present to the Fedora and Red Hat community was the YUM repositories for MySQL. Our own YUM repositories. We want to extend that to more distros. No promises on which and timing and stuff, but we want to extend this. this is a complement to what you have. For instance, if you have, let's say, a Red Hat release, where we actually have a repo now, you may have like MySQL 5.5, and they won't upgrade to 5.6. But if you still want 5.6 in that, you can use our repo and get 5.6 for that Red Hat version. So it's a complement to what you get through the distro. And also, that effort, that repo project, has really improved the packaging we do. And it has reduced the patches, the number of patches that Fedora and Red Hat have to apply to our source code when packaging. So it's basically an improvement project for our software and the packaging and the ability to package our software. So I think this is a great way to improve our software installation thing, where we can just make it easier to be a package maintainer because you have to apply fewer patches. That's kind of the core idea of that project. And then you guys, you take the tarball we have and you put into your repository, and as I said, you add some patches to that. And we package MySQL for some distros. In Fedora, we actually do the work, and the maintainer just takes our input and he maybe makes a few changes, but he uses what we do. We have a release engineering team member who does the packaging. In Debian, we do a bit of the same thing. They do 5.5, but we have done the 5.6 work with some volunteers. So we are not alone on that, but we have helped doing that. So I thank you to the community for actually packaging MySQL. You do most of the work. We help out a few places. Like Debian had a real shortage of packages for MySQL, so we stepped in and offered our help. So I want to talk a bit about how we develop MySQL, because that affects how you package and use MySQL. So we have what we call DMR model. We have development milestone releases. So at this point, it's a finished product, the GA release. Before that, we have a lot of DMRs. We publish these. They have a version number in the 5.7 series at the moment. And we do all the feature implementation in feature branches. It could be a simple bug fix. It could be multiple features in one branch, depending on what we think is the right granularity of these feature trees. And the important thing is, before we merge these back to trunk, we do a lot of QA. We do a lot of code review. We run gcov to find the code coverage. We add unit tests. MTR tests are kind of SQL layer tests. So we write an SQL script to test the functionality. We have a random query generator that will run random queries from a grammar to test the kind of stability and the corner cases of these features. So there's a lot of testing going on before it enters our development branch. And there's continued testing. Each push is tested with a lot of tests, and even more on a daily basis and a weekly basis. And then, at some point, we make a release candidate. We might make several release candidates before we have a GA, but at least one. And after that, we don't add features. We hardly fix bugs. Well, fix some bugs. If support has a lot of users saying, okay, you need to fix this bug, it's useless without fixing this bug, they will tell us in engineering, you have to fix this bug. If I have a bug that I want to fix in a GA release, I would have to ask support for permission. I can't just push my bug into, well, technically I can, but like in the process, I can't push a bug to 5.6 now without having approval. I need to explain why this is important to existing customers or users, and I have to explain how this is not risky. I have to convince support that this won't break anything, and this is actually needed. We believe in stability, so we have as few patches and changes as possible. No new features, no risk bug fixes. And we have the same continuous testing per push on a daily and weekly basis. So if we follow a single feature through this, before the GA, before DMR, about a month before, we have a cutoff where we don't add more features to that. So we spend a month in QA, more or less. We might respin the whole thing if you find a release critical bug, a showstopper. We'd run upgrade, downgrade testing. We test with other products. So we do a lot of integration testing from cutoff until the release of a milestone. The milestones are of release candidate quality. That's our goal. So any milestone should be able to just be renamed into a release candidate if you want to. We have no fixed schedule for releases. We have a major release every 2 or 3 years. We have development milestone every 4 months, maybe. That's a bit more there's a bigger range from what we can do there. And after GA, we have bi-monthly releases. So every 2 months, there's a new update. That's the schedule we're on. And yeah, as I said, after GA, we also spend this month for each milestone we have. So we, after we released 5 out of 37, when we did that, we had been developing 5 out of 38 for a month. We spent 1 month more, and then we cut off for 5 out of 38, and then 5 out of 38 will go out. And that's 1 month, which means, I don't know, it's just a guess, but maybe a man-year of testing of QA before we release one of these micro-releases. So Linux distros want minimal risks to stable distributions. So what is minimal risk? We try to fix only the necessary bugs. What we deem necessary. That might not be the same what you call necessary, but that's what we think is necessary. We thoroughly test everything. We have rigid QA, and we tell users to update to get to these necessary fixes. We think it's necessary for users to fix these. Not only security fixes, but mostly security fixes. Oh, I actually don't know ratio, but security fixes is the most important thing, of course. But there are others we think are necessary. Well, downstream distros, they like to cherry-pick security bugs, security fixes. And then run the standard test suite that we export. That is unit tests and these MTR tests, the SQL layer tests. That is less testing than we do. So we're a bit concerned that when you cherry-pick, the quality might be worse than when you take the whole micro-release. That's our view. I believe that our micro-releases are, well, of not necessarily better quality, but we are more sure of that quality than if you backport only security bug fixes. And then you tell the users to upgrade to get these security fixes. So we would like distros to take our releases without, not just cherry picking, but take the whole micro release. We got Ubuntu to do that this February. We filed an application for what's called a micro-release exception. As far as I know, Ubuntu is the only distro that has this. There's a concept where they deviate from that rule that you only have minimal patches. If you can prove that the upstream project has satisfactory QA and development processes, then you are allowed to apply for an exception to this rule, and they will take all the micro releases automatically. It's de facto been done for a number of years, but this is kind of a formal approval of doing that. So the security team won't complain to this package maintainer for doing it. So that's a formal process for doing this. It's used, for instance, for web browsers that have a very rapid rate of development that you need to follow. And it's used for larger, mature projects. Of course, because we have to prove this, the quality and the development process is stable enough. So if I would have a kind of a request to OpenSUSE, it would be to, or especially maybe SUSE, the enterprise Linux, which is a very stable, long-time thing, it would be to think about the concept of micro-release exceptions. I guess MySQL is not the only software that could benefit from that, and I think maybe SUSE could benefit from that as well. It would be easier for the maintainer to just take everything. You don't have to look at which patches are security patches. You don't have to argue for taking more patches than necessary or strictly necessary for security bugs, because you have a formal procedure to do this. So that's my request. Think about that. I think the Ubuntu solution here is good, because it's not just MySQL. There are several projects. Like they have an exception for Postgres as well, and well, Chrome and Firefox and stuff. So also GNOME and KDE, I think. So think about that. Our goal for you guys as package maintainers is to have as few patches as possible applied during packaging. We want to take back the patches you have. If they're usable for other people, we want to take them back into our product. We don't want you to be patching this all the time. It's a lot of work to maintain these patches. So as few patches as possible. And it says as possible because some patches will have to be there. We don't support System 390. We don't support ARM, actually. Not yet, at least. We don't support GNU Herd on PowerPC, whatever. There's a lot of variations out there that we don't support, and some of those you might have to maintain patches for. But we might be willing to help you maintain that patch. But we can test it. We don't want things in our code base that we can't test and maintain ourselves. So if you have hardware architectures that are too different from what we support, you might have to add a patch, but we can help you port that patch if it's a problem at some point. We can do that. We just need access to some hardware to run it on. Then, how we handle what we call distro bugs. When we get a bug from a package maintainer, it's usually a bug about packaging. Some package maintainers report other bugs as well, but most of them are packaging bugs. And when there's a problem with packaging, a lot of users may suffer from that bug. If you can't upgrade that package, the users won't get, there's thousands of users, millions of users that won't get that upgraded package. They might have to have security bugs in their system because of that. So we track these bugs. When a package maintainer files a bug, if you know about this guy, we will get a notification that, okay, here's a bug from package maintainer. Have a look at it and see if it's actually a packaging bug, if it's important. So I get an email. Other people may get emails too. So we tag it and track it. We have special tracking web pages for these bugs. They show up on the dashboard for the team leads. We track security bugs, release critical bugs, showstoppers and stuff on a separate page, and the distro bugs show up there as well. So it's very visible that we have a packaging problem. And it may result in higher priority. Not always. Some bugs are kind of, yeah, it would be nice to fix this, but it's not critical. And then it's not that high prioritized, but if it's critical, it will be prioritized. So that was kind of the start of the upstream, downstream point of my talk. I'll talk more about it now. It's not about how it is to be upstream. I'm going to talk about both upstream and downstream, and the mistakes we do, the things we do right, all that kind of thing. So We typically look at the waterfall model. Everyone who's taken Software Engineering 101 knows that the first thing about the waterfall model is that it's wrong. It's not a one-way street. We need feedback from downstream. And downstream needs to actually give feedback to us for things to improve. We get feedback from users as well. So this is not a one-way street. We want to improve this to actually get this feedback, and it's necessary for package maintainers too to give that feedback for their own work to be easier. So let's look at a few cases of upstream-downstream relationships. This is a good one. So this is kind of the perfect upstream-downstream relationship. There's a nice little trickle here. There's even a kind of a enterprise Linux pool in there, which things are a bit slower. It's a very, very nice place to be in. And it's fall. Well, it's beautiful colors. That's what I was thinking. And I hope we sometimes can be perceived as a good upstream. I know at least some of the distros are perceived as good downstreams. But not always. Sometimes there's a bad one. This is kind of the bad upstream or downstream. There's no feedback. There's no information flowing any way, neither upwards or downwards. And we sometimes do that. Well, when I go on vacation, I'm not responding. When a maintainer goes on vacation, he's not responding. I can't get an answer to the questions I have about the distro. And we may have some problems. This is solvable. But everything isn't kind of as beautiful as it was in the good case. Not always. And sometimes it gets worse. We make mistakes. We make mistakes and downstreams make mistakes. I'm going to mention a few of those, some real-life cases. I can start with one of our mistakes. Can you read that? MySQL man pages silently relicensed away from GPL. That was fun. Yeah, it was fun for me. I spent the whole day on that thing. This was a bug, actually. We made a mistake. We were changing the license text of the Enterprise Edition from the GPL license to the Enterprise license because we want to keep these things kind of Enterprise license, Enterprise packages, community license, community packages. And we did it wrong. We copied the same Enterprise license into both packages. It hit /dot immediately. That's fun. Well, /dot, all kudos to the /dot team because the next day they said, oh yeah, it was just a bug. Whoever read that? Nobody read that. Everybody read the first one. So we made a big mistake. Kind of, we should have had some testing, some QA to actually assure that, okay, the license is correct. But this happened while relicensing the enterprise package. Nobody thought about the community package. We don't change that. So that was an honest mistake made by honest developers. And these things happen sometimes. We try not to, but sometimes we do that. But also, this wasn't reported by a Linux distro. It was reported by someone else. But sometimes the Linux distros as well, or everyone downstream, they also make mistakes. For instance, nobody told us. We read about this as /dot, and then we report the bug to ourselves. So when things go wrong, the thing to think about is just to keep calm and report a bug, please. Then we will just handle this like a normal bug instead of handling the bug report on /dot. That is a bit more pleasant for me. I don't have to spend a whole day commenting on /dot and all the websites that repeat what /dot said and saying, okay, this is a bug, look at this bug report. It's a tedious job to do. And then we have some well, mistakes in both directions. The client library, libmysql client.so.18. I see Roman smiling because he probably knows what I'm talking about. I mentioned it to him earlier, so we made a mistake. When we switched from other tools to CMake as a build system, we had the symbol versions for the library. They were generated, the file was perfect, but the compiling line that built the library forgot to mention that symbol version file. So we had unversioned symbols in that library. Everything continues to work. The library works. This happened when going from libmysql client 16 to libmysql client 18. So no applications were broken, and everything was fine. We didn't notice. We didn't notice until Debian told us. So Debian said, you guys, this isn't versioned anymore. You should probably add a version file. And we said, but we have the file. And then, oh no, we don't use it. And in the meantime, someone, I don't know who, it could be SUSE, it could be Red Hat, I don't know. Someone made a patch to fix this. And they made a patch that didn't enable the symbol version file we had. No, they made a new symbol version file. So they made a patch that created a new file, and they didn't create those symbol versions the same way we did. So the symbols were versioned differently. And this is currently in Red Hat, Fedora, SUSE, OpenSUSE. And we're just trying to get rid of this difference that Debian, Ubuntu, Gentoo, and Upstream has one set of symbol versions, and Red Hat, Fedora, OpenSUSE, SUSE has a different one. And we're just trying to kind of clear this up now. I talked to Red Hat. They're going to fix it in Red Hat 7, Fedora in Fedora 21, I think. And we hope to get this into SUSE and OpenSUSE as well, so that in the future we can have the same symbol versions. So we made a mistake. And I want to say that, well, kudos to the guy who made a patch. He did something, but he made a small mistake as well by not using the file we had, but creating his own. So there are mistakes on both sides, and we end up in a situation that's much harder to resolve. This would have been solved upstream if we had a bug report, which we didn't. At least I haven't seen one. Then you have other interesting things going on. We have another library, libmysql D, the embedded server. We have this as a statically linked library, libmysql D.A. And then we go through these distros and so libmysql D.so. What's that? We don't support that. We don't make that. And it turns out the distro has been, well, crafting their own GCC line with a lot of stuff and creating this as a shared library. And they have to maintain a patch to do this, and we might accidentally break this. And the solution here was that we had to support that distro in a repo. So we say, okay, we have to go into that distro and kind of live well in that distro, adapt to that distro. So, well, we don't really support a shared library, but we probably should make one. So what we did was just added the option to build a shared one. It's still not officially supported, but we actually can build it, which means that the distro can now drop their ad hoc building line and use the build system as we created it. So there are kind of weird things going on in various distros, caused by bugs from our side or from requests from their side that they didn't actually bring up to us. So thinking about the client library thing, our goal is to make the MySQL experience as similar as possible across distros. We want users to have the same experience no matter which Linux they run on. And that is what we do by coordinating between these. Kind of me talking to several distros means that I will kind of be a coordinating point for this. And I hope we can start to move in the same direction. There are differences. There will always be some differences, but I think there are a bit too many now. Not very many, but a few. There are differences between distros in important aspects. For instance, do an application need an openssl license exception to use openssl? We build our enterprise edition with openssl, but we have actually bought the right to publish source code for another SSL library so that Linux distros don't need to compile with openssl. Debian and Ubuntu don't like this. There's Debian right here looking at me. And because a GPL program can't be linked with a library linked with openssl unless there's an exemption for this openssl clause in the GPL license of that client application. And Red Hat and SUSE have a different view on this. But that's the difference. So we can't, our users and clients are asking for openssl, but because of some Linux distros, we can't just say we're going to use openssl. You can't force all these client applications to change the license. That won't work. So we have to ship the dual solution still. So I will talk to the Debian guys to how to solve this in the future, because openssl, or maybe now LibreSSL, is a project that's kind of growing and continuing, while the other one isn't. And there are other questions. Is the installation interactive? In his talk on Friday, Joe talked about the security aspects of MySQL, but randomly generated passwords during install and stuff. While on Debian and Ubuntu, the installation asks for a root password. We have to support that as well. And does the service start automatically after installation? Some distros it does, some distros it don't. And we have to, for those that start the service automatically, you have to make really sure that the defaults are safe, that it's secure. And my headache, given alternative packages, can you have one that's default? If you have MySQL 5.5, 5.6, and MariaDB, like you want to now, can you have one default and other packages supported? And what does it actually mean to be default? That's just the definition is hard. So we've been fighting this trying to find a solution in Fedora, in Debian, Ubuntu. In OpenSUSE, there is a solution. Thanks to Michael for that solution. But in Fedora, we end up by the maintainer. He bumped the epoch or version number for the one that was supposed to be default. That was his final solution. He couldn't do anything else in the end. And they had decided to make one default. And they just had to do it, and then that was the only solution left. So these repositories and stuff, they're not made to have defaults that way. In Debian and Ubuntu, each client application will specify a default. That is something. You have different defaults for different applications. So depending on which application you install first, you get a different server. Well, funny. So when trying to synchronize across distros, one of the topics also mentioned by Joe on Friday was the secure file privilege. This is something we're working on as we speak. This is a setting that needs to be set in the configuration file to make a really secure MySQL installation. But because of the secure, the SE Linux policies, the AppArmor policies, we need to coordinate this. It must be the same on all Linux distros. We need to set a directory name that the server is allowed to read and write, and this has to be the same one. Otherwise, they will have to add a patch to the SE Linux policies and to the AppArmor policies, and we don't want to put people through that. So we are trying to coordinate this between Linux distros as we speak, trying to find a common directory name where we can do this, that the server can be allowed to read and write. And I think that's a natural thing for us upstream to do, because we talk to these package maintainers, and we see the problem, and we just send out emails that saying that, okay, we need to do this, and we need to coordinate this. How about this directory name? Will that work for you? And they have different opinions. But in the end, we find a common name. We haven't done so yet, but I think we will find very soon a name that will be a directory name that is good for all. And we can just apply this and get it into the policies and everything, which are packages that are created upstream from all the distros. So this is about the cross-distro synchronization that we need to do. So I can summarize a bit. Linux distros are really an important distribution channel for us. On the back of my shirt, it says the world's most popular database system, open source database system. And that's a lot thanks to the Linux distros. The packages that come with Linux distros are really important for us. So really, the relationship between package maintainers and us is really important. And our goal is to have as few differences as possible, both between our own products, our own packages. For instance, we have packages on the website that download and install manually with dpkg or with RPM. We have packages we install through a repository. We have tarbles that you compile yourself and then install. And all these, we want these to be as similar as possible. At the same time that we want to be as similar as possible to the downstream distros. So there's a lot of synchronization going here, and it's definitely not a waterfall model. This is really a kind of spiral that continues forever. But with upstream and downstream, it's about reducing the number of patches, as I said. Between distros, it's about reducing the number of parameter combinations used. If we have to handle something specially, if you have to add a parameter to something for one distro, we get a combinatorial explosion of test cases we need to run to maintain this. So we want to make things as similar as possible. I think it also gains the user that the experience is similar on all these. We can write documentations and blog posts and everything about how to do this and that with MySQL on Linux instead of how to do this and that with MySQL on openssl, on Debian, on Ubuntu, on Red Hat, Fedora, everything. We can just combine our efforts to create a better user experience. And here's actually the reason why I'm here today, to meet and talk with package maintainers. That is, we haven't been that good at it before. We are really trying to be good. But also, I would like package maintainers to contact me. I know a few of them in some distros, but I really would like to have package maintainers contact me. I will contact them. I know that Oracle is kind of this big wall of no faces and just corporate logos. But here's a face, here's a name. Use me and get in touch with me, and I will get you in connection with the right guys. So I'm here today to understand this distro, to understand OpenSUSE, to understand the environment, understand the people, the community, and the relationship with SUSE. I want to find the problems to solutions before they occur. And we can do that by, OpenSUSE is a great example of this. Michael has done a great work on packaging 5.7 DMRs. These are development versions, not, well, we don't dare call them production versions. I guess some people actually use them in production, but we don't really recommend that. But by packaging our development versions, OpenSUSE is now ready. The day we go GA, OpenSUSE can just download the tarball, rebuild the package, it's running, live. First distro in the world to support MySQL 5.7, I guess. That's my guess. None of the other distros are close to that. So you have integrated 5.7 already. And that also makes it possible to come back to us, say, this thing doesn't work. We have problems. And you can do that before we go GA. You can do that while we are still developing, while we can do a lot of changes quickly. So by being very much at the front of development, you can get problems fixed earlier. And by having our repositories, we think we are going to be better at discovering these things ourselves and providing you with the solutions to those problems. And meeting package maintainers also gives us a possibility to talk about upcoming changes. For instance, I mentioned the openssl thing. It doesn't really bother OpenSUSE that much because you are using openssl, but we see that it's hard to provide new features, SSL features, with the other library. So what should we do? We need to talk about that with the distros that are using the YSSL code. Okay, how can we, what's the future here? That source code it's maintained, but it's not extended. There's no new features in that. There's new features in openssl that people are asking us to implement. So how can we do that? And those talks are much easier to do while we're doing development. So just talking to package maintainers and being early on with discussing these topics openly. For instance, I'm in the GIS labs release we are using Boost. MySQL has never been compiled with Boost before. We talked a bit with Ubuntu actually about this before it happened. And I was, okay, how would you do it if we depend on Boost or the Boost header files? How would you do that when you build the stuff? How would you handle the different versions of Boost that we would need, other packages we need? So we can discuss these things and find a solution before the problem occurs. I think that's the kind of a key message here. We need to have open communication both ways to discuss the upcoming changes. And of course, the problems you people have, but if you can talk about the upcoming changes early on, we probably won't have that many problems after we release something. And please believe me when I say that everybody makes mistakes. We are honest developers, and we make honest mistakes. And that's why the trust between package maintainers and us is very important. You guys need to trust us. We have to build that trust. And we need to trust you. If I see a package maintainer that's doing something weird, it's easy for me too to think, he's doing this on malice. This is malice. He wants to hurt me. He wants to hurt me personally. No, they don't. And just saying, we don't want to hurt package maintainers. So we need that trust both ways. And we just need to think about, these are engineers on both sides doing honest mistakes, and let's just talk about the technological issues and keep at that. And well, when meeting people, you have a better view of kind of who that person is. So when now I met Michal and Roman, I know that these are great guys. I can't imagine them doing things on malice now. Well, some people disagree here. I can't imagine you guys doing something bad on purpose. And that's a very good thing to have. And you're smiling, it's just devilish. Okay. I choose to believe that you are nice guys. So meeting in person is really great. So I'm happy to be here. And since I have both these, the former and the current package maintainer, I just want to say thank you for packaging MySQL. This is just awesome. Can we get them applause, please? Thank you. You guys are great. The job you've done with, you had at one point 5.5, 5.6, 5.7 DMRs, and MariaDB and cluster in there or something? Maybe not 5.5, 5.6, 5.7 DMRs, cluster, and MariaDB at the same time. And it's all a big thing with defaults and you can choose which one you want. That's amazing. That's really amazing. So you haven't asked any questions so far, but we have time for a few, if you have any.
Certainly appreciated that this is a fairly well appreciated approach to help the distributors and the packages to get their stuff done in such a way that it actually fits and everything. You would be able to expect the same thing from the package. But why is it that you produce packages on your own as well?
Because we have users, both paying and non-paying users, that want that. I'm not sure, but especially for repo, for instance, Debian currently ships with 5.5. Well, there's 5.6 in testing now. Oh, no, sorry, experimental. So if the 5.5, the Debian stable at the moment is 5.5. If a user on that Debian stable wants to use 5.6, he has to get it from us, either as packages downloaded from a web page or through a repo, which we currently don't have. So that's why we produce these packages, so that the users can pick something else than what's in the distro. And we have that as a supported platform. So we support that. So it's basically about a choice to do something a bit different than the distro. Some users want to upgrade faster or maybe slower. So it's just to support that scenario for users.
In addition to that, on the note, with you saying thank you to the packages, specifically for Michal, because he has been doing a tremendous amount of work. I didn't even fully take over the job yet. So this is beautiful. And I would also say thank you very much for coming here and for opening up the opportunity to talk to you, to be approachable, to come with two persons, and to go into a dialogue is just beautiful. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Thank you. There's a question.
So following on from Roman's question about why do you offer your own packages, my question would be, why can't you offer those packages through the open build service in a dedicated project, so they come from the distribution, but you're one of the contributors, probably the main contributor to that newer version or whatever it is?
Yeah, maybe we could use that. We have our own build system that's been with us for a long time that we use, which means that when we ship a package, we actually test the exact same binary that we ship. So we have our own infrastructure and we're using that, but maybe we could use OBS. It will probably work. We have a lot of tools integrated into this build system, so it would be a major effort to move away from it. So I don't see it happening, but I think, well, maybe we could it's an open source system, so we could install it on our own servers. That's a good idea. The build system we have isn't perfect by far. It has its problems, and that is definitely something I'm thinking back. I think some of our projects, not the server, but some other projects have been looking at OBS. I heard some comment about some of our utilities looking at OBS as a build system. So we may do that in the future. That's definitely an interesting project for us.
And you could also use that for building your packages for the other distributions as well.
Yeah, and Windows and Mac and whatever, I think. Not yet Mac, okay, what Windows, yeah.
Well, I was thinking the other Linux distributions. But,
yeah,
but,
those two.
And I think I'm right in saying it's getting easier to move changes between build service instances as well, so that if you have your own build service and you make some patches in there or changes, whatever, then pushing those to or pulling them from there to OBS is also possible.
Yeah, I don't know much about OBS. I don't really know OBS, but that was one of the first things people asked me about when I came here. Going, are you interested in using OBS? And I was okay. How does this work? And then I get an explanation. So this is great. I will definitely bring that back to our release team. And well, it seems we're already on that track from some angle of releasing some tools. But I will definitely bring this back to the release team and see, at least can we learn something from that? So thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, I think one of the main advantages of that would be that people in the community can help you work on your own packages, and it becomes more of a decentralized thing. You could still own your packages even if they're hosted on the public OBS. Have your own project for that, but then other people could branch from that and submit changes back to you and so on, and it all happens.
Yeah, some help in maintaining packages is always accepted. We see the combinatorial explosion of platforms and packages, and well, we just look at it, and we support several versions of each distro, and it's an explosion of the number of packages to maintain. So I really see that challenge, and some way to kind of reduce the engineering effort needed from our side would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Thank you. More questions? I hope so. I hope to come next year. Thank you. I think that's all. I saw no further hands. So yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.